on to another new sutta. So this sutta is also newly translated. Notice the citation or reference. It's M2. M2 means Majjhima or middle length discourses, number 2. So if it's placed so near the top, or the first sutta, first few sutta, that is very important. Okay? The title is Sabba Sava. Sabba means all. Asava means, asava is a bit problem translated to English because the meaning is to flow, something that flows, sava. Okay? That are intensified. A prefix that gives the idea of either in or out. So this flowing can come this way, there's towards yourself or away. Okay? So here it refers to what happens at our senses, our 6 senses. What are the 6 senses? The eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Okay, this is what creates the world, our world, the all. The Buddha calls this the all. There's a very short sutta called Sabba Sutta. In other words, all the things we can know, called the all, are through our 6 senses. What can we know? We can only know what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch, what we think. That's the only 6 kinds of knowledges. Right? And our 6 way of knowing things are through the 6 senses. Okay? So this is the world. Any kind of suffering will come from that. Right? So here what the Buddha does, the Buddha summarizes the roots of suffering into 3. In the commentaries, 4 are mentioned. Number 4 is views. Okay? But view is already found in the existence. Okay? But why the commentaries, they add views? Because they want to make sure that easier to teach, we divide them into more items so it's more clear to teach. First of all, sense desire causes suffering because we depend on our senses. And our senses are used to feeling nice things. We like pleasurable things. Okay? So we grow or we evolve, try to run away from pain, suffering. And this becomes such a serious attitude that sometimes we do not know how to get out of it. Okay? So what the Buddha is trying to tell us is, we have to learn to outgrow this primitive caveman attitude of looking for pleasure or avoiding pain all the time, because this is all a mental thing. Okay? And if you understand that, then you know how to deal with this opposite of pleasure and pain. So this is sense desire. So this is the first most common cause of suffering. Another important meaning to this sense desire is we think that something is missing in our lives, and we look for the answer outside. We keep looking outside. Okay? We look for it in the sense objects. But the reality is, the sense objects are created by the senses, and the senses are controlled by the mind. Okay? So if you understand the mind, you understand how the senses work, how the sense objects operate. Okay? So once the sense desire is one thing, then you have something else called existence, or more fully, the influx of existence. We want to remain forever, if possible. That's one idea. May I not die? May I have eternal life? Some religions even promise you eternal life. If you don't join them, then eternal death. Okay? But there is no such thing as eternal this, eternal death. In fact, if you talk about anything eternal or permanent, there are only 2 possible ways of talking. One is space, emptiness. Emptiness is permanent, in a manner of speaking. Because in a sense, emptiness doesn't exist. I mean, it's this vast vacuum, if you like. Okay? The other one is nirvana. Nirvana is said to be permanent or eternal or timeless because nirvana is beyond time and space. So it's just a manner of speaking, actually. Right? So in reality, it is correct and true to say there are no such thing as anything permanent. all things in this universe are impermanent. Whatever exists must be impermanent. So here, the desire to be reborn, to live on and so on. Okay? That's one. But here, most commonly, in terms of influx, it refers to the desire for higher rebirth, those high levels of meditation, form birth, formless birth. Okay? So if you get stuck there, you still come back anyway. So you go round and round in the cycle of suffering. Finally, ignorance. This is what feeds the other two. Ignorance here especially refers to ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. Okay? Not understanding what is really suffering. In other words, what these two are, the nature of pain. Secondly, we don't know how this pain arises, the conditions that create it, okay, the craving. And we do not know how to end it, and the way to end it, okay, the Four Noble Truths. Now, in this sutta also, I mentioned the 10 fetters. Right? Now, these three are kind of like the roots of suffering. These 10 are more detailed. They show how to get rid of them in stages, and by getting rid of this in stages, we become liberated at different levels. And we have different names. For example, if you are able to destroy these first 3 fetters, these are very famous first 3. In fact, from my understanding of over 40 years of studying Buddhism, all you need to do is make sure these 3 fetters are destroyed. And if you destroy those 3 fetters, you can be sure you're on the way to awakening already. Because you're a stream winner. You're a stream winner already. Okay? Then the other things will slowly be overcome as you go on practicing. Right? So you notice here, sense desire is found here. Okay? And then existence, these 2, right? Greed for form existence, greed for formless existence. In fact, that's how you define the terms here. And then ignorance is here, right? So in between, there are other in-between fetters. Okay? Fetters, they are like, ball and chain. The prisoners, they get tied with ball and chain, so they have problem walking around. So this slows us down. Right? And these 3 things also affects our meditation. Right? So in other words, these things, these fetters, have also to do with meditation. Whereas this one are just kind of a root causes of suffering. So otherwise they are the same. If you don't know what the difference is, they all cause suffering. Okay, that's the meaning. Right? So this sutta is useful because it's very instructive. This one sutta, there's no story. The Buddha straight away said, I'm going to teach you how to overcome the influxes. And then the Buddha gives 7 methods, isn't it? 7 methods of overcoming the causes of suffering. Okay, let's begin. Page 26. Your book is 26. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Blessed One was residing in Anatta Pindika's park in Jeta's forest near Savatthi. Now, in the Buddha's time, when we talk about monastery, they are not beautiful built-up places like what we see today. They are actually basically forest monasteries. They're very beautiful places, lots of trees. And the trees they're not too close so that you can sit, you can sit, but the foliage is very big, so there's a lot of shade. So the people will sit there and listen to the Buddha teaching. Another thing, the Buddha had no PA system, not even like the one I'm using now. So he would talk in a normal voice. So obviously the Buddha must have a loud voice. He's quite a big-sized person. And the crowd is very silent. The other thing is there are no traffic like today. No airplanes, no trains. The sound level is very low decibels. So the Dhamma can be heard very clearly. Then the Blessed One addressed the monks, Bhikshus. So here we see the Buddha teaching unprompted. He took initiative to teach. Occasionally a monk would come and request. Here he thought it's the right time, he's going to teach. And the monks respond, Bhante. The monks answered the Blessed One in assent. So here you see conditions of teaching are complete. First, there is the teaching, the Dharma. Second, there's the teacher. Third, there's a place mentioned. The audience is mentioned. Okay? And time also is mentioned. The time, the Indians are not too particular, they say at one time. Because this Dharma, whenever we teach it like now, we study the Dharma, that's the time. Okay? Because the idea of the Buddha is not, the idea of early monks is not simply to record the sutta is just for fun. The idea is to relive the suttas again. Every time we listen to it, it's like we're listening to the Buddha teaching again. It's that kind of experience. The Blessed One said this: Bhikshus, I will teach you the means of restraining all the influxes, how to stop all those things that flow into us causing suffering and rebirth. Listen well, pay close attention to it, I will speak. So here the Buddha is preparing the monks. Yes, Bhante, the monks answered the Blessed One. In essence, the Blessed One said this. You see all these cues, these are called cues. The Blessed One said this. Okay? So all this paper you have in your hand is meant to be heard. You know? In fact, there are monks, forest monks in Sri Lanka, they written to me, they say they ask permission if they can read this. They want to take this into MP3 and they're going to play it and listen. Okay? And then after that they go to the meditation. So in fact, if you listen to it, it's easier. Because reading it's a bit heavy on the eye because a lot of repetitions. Okay? The problem is some translators try to make it easier to read by cutting down the repetition. So you put 3 dots. The problem is you don't know what is left out. You have to start guessing. You have to look earlier on. And it's quite troubling. So what I've done here, I've put in repetitive passages in full, unless they are negative statements which won't help in our practice, then I'll just make it short form. But if it is important for our practice, it's laid out in full. First, the Buddha gives us a summary of what he's going to teach. Bhikshus are the monks. No? It's Sanskrit, it is used in English, adopted as an English word, bhikshu. I say the destruction of the influxes is for one who knows and sees, not for one who neither knows nor sees. So you got to know it and you got to see it. To know it means to know it theoretically, to see it means to experience it for yourself. Theory, practice. Yeah? Also, another meaning is you have experienced it, you realize it, then you come out of the meditation, you look back and say, oh yes, I've already attained it. Okay, so there's 2 ways of looking at it. Very often, our realization, you may not know it. For example, while you're listening to me, you say, okay, now I seem to understand, things make sense. Eh? Then you go back home, or maybe a few days later, 1 week later, or even months later, maybe years later, you look back and say, oh yes, now I understand. Okay? So that is called in retrospect. So very often this wisdom can grow in retrospect. Why? Because every time you listen to the Dharma, you get a bit here, a bit there, and then they're like jigsaw puzzle, And then one day they fit together, you see the connection. So wisdom means you see the connection in all these disparate teachings. And then you say, aha, now I understand. Right? So in that sense, the teacher doesn't give you the wisdom, the teacher gives you the raw materials, and then you are the one who makes the link. So once the link are connected, wisdom. In other words, you can relate to it directly. You begin to see, yeah, I see this in my life. Notice the word see. Okay, know and see. Now you know. I tell you, okay, you say, yeah, I know, I understand. But you don't see it yet. Then one day you see all these things connected, Then you say, I see. Okay? So know and see. And knowing what, Bhikshus, seeing what is there, the destruction of the influxes. There is wise attention, yoniso, manasikāra, and unwise attention. On account of unwise attention, Bhikshus, unarisen influxes arise and arisen influxes grow. On account of wise attention, Bhikshus, unarisen influxes do not arise, and arisen influxes are abandoned. In fact, these last 2 lines talk about what are called the 4 right efforts. The 4 right efforts. No? Unwise attention here is the line talks about the first 2 right efforts, and the next line the second 2 right efforts. Let me elaborate. Okay, unwise attention means thinking the wrong way. Technically, it means you regard things as permanent, not suffering, having a self, basically. Or to simplify is when you see things as impermanent, anything as impermanent, that is unwise attention. Take for example, say we don't like somebody, okay, this person's got a bad habit, oh, this person always like that, this is always like that. There's no such thing as always like that. Yeah? It's just at that time we're irritated, so we say this person is always like that. It's as if this character is going to be permanent, but there's no such thing. Okay? So that's unwise attention. Or another thing is that there is an unpleasant memory. We keep thinking about it. That's unwise attention. Because when you go on thinking about this unpleasant memory, it's going to attract other bad memories. We have a lot of memories in our minds, bad and good, you see. You pick on one, that one is going to attract more bad ones. Mental proliferation. Okay? Loving kindness is opposite. Loving kindness, you think a happy thought, it attracts more happy thoughts. Right? Wise attention is the opposite. Okay? You look at this situation and say, well, what is this impermanent? Right? Even when someone is very kind to us, you feel happy. At the same time, you feel sad also. You say, wow, is this kindness, It's impermanent, right? But a truly wise person will understand there's no point in being sad about this. Okay, what shall I do now? Okay, how can I continue this goodness? Okay, so this is wise attention. In summary, the unarisen influxes do not arise, arisen influxes grow. That is negative. So what are the 4 efforts? Number 1 is to prevent a negative state that has not arisen. The keyword is prevent. Number 2 is stop. To stop a negative state that has arisen. Okay, let's say if you have not spoken before, you don't stop. Okay? And if you have been smoking, you stop. Right? These are 2 right efforts dealing with negative state. Then number 3, a positive state that is not arisen yet, you cultivate. So the keyword here is cultivate. You cultivate a good that has not arisen. Suppose you have not meditated before, you start meditating. And the 4th right effort is to maintain it, sustain it. The effort to maintain or sustain. Okay? So these are the 4 right efforts. No? The right effort to prevent, the right effort to stop or to end, the right effort to cultivate, the right effort to maintain. So this is the last 2 lines. And then the Buddha goes into the topics. Bhikshus, there are influxes, they are to be abandoned by seeing, dasana. Number 2, there are influxes to be abandoned by restraint, samvara. There are influxes to be abandoned by reflective use, patisevana. There are influxes to be abandoned by endurance, adivasa. There are influxes to be abandoned by avoidance, parivajjana. There are influxes to be abandoned by removal, vinodana. There are influxes to be abandoned by cultivation, bhavana. If you're still not sure the meaning of influx or influxes here, you can take it as suffering in the cause of suffering. Okay, if you like, the suffering and the causes of suffering, or the conditions that cause suffering. So the Buddha has listed 7 of them in summary, then the rest of the sutta he elaborates one by one. The first one is in fact the most important for us as unawakened beings. How to abandon influxes by seeing. And what bhikshus are the influxes to be abandoned by seeing? Okay. The first part is called unwise attention. Here bhikshus, the uninstructed worldling or ignorant ordinary person who has no regard for the noble ones, is unskilled and undisciplined in the teaching or dharma of the noble ones, who has no regard for the true individual, and is unskilled and undisciplined in the teaching of the true individuals. In other words, this person has no grounding in spiritual teaching. He does not understand what states or things should be attended to and what states should not be attended to. He does not, in other words, he does not understand what things, cancel the second note. Second note, cancel it. He should read, does not understand what things to pay attention to, what things not to pay attention to. In other words, this first group of people, they do not know how to look at things. What they should not think about, they think about it. What they should be thinking about, they don't. Okay? So that's when suffering arises. Not knowing what states to be attended to, what states not to be attended to, he attends to states that should not be attended to and does not attend to states which should be attended to. Okay? And what bhikshus are the states that should not be attended to which he attends? Bhikshus are those states that are attended to where the unarisen influx of sense desire arises, or the arisen influx of sense desires grows. Where the unarisen influx of existence arises, or where the arisen influx of sense desire grows. Where the arisen influx of ignorance arises, and the arisen influx of sense desire grows. This is just an elaboration of what was stated earlier. Whatever influx that have not arisen, they come into being. And when they exist, they go on growing. See? So that's wrong attention. Okay? Wrong attention means you create negative states in your mind, and then you make it persist. That's the meaning. Eh? So this is wrong attention. Okay. And what bhikshus are the state that should be attended to, but to which he does not attend? What he should do, he does not do. Okay, this one. Here is where a bhikshus, there are those states that he attends to where the unarisen influx of desire does not arise, or the arisen influx of sense desires are abandoned. Where the unarisen influx of existence does not arise, or the arisen influx of sense desire are abandoned. Where the unarisen influx of ignorance does not arise, or the arisen influx of sense desire are abandoned. So the keyword here is does not arise, abandoned. He does not do that. Okay? So these are the states that should be attended to, but he does not attend. By attending to those states that he should not be attending to, and not attending to states that he should be attending to, unarisen influxes arise, and arisen influxes grow. Now this is the negative statement. Right? Then the Buddha talks more objectively. What are the wrong ways that he thinks in? The 16 doubts. Okay, this is called the grammar of suffering. Yeah? These are the things you should be avoiding to think. Because if you think in this way, or rather if you want to classify, what do people worry about? What kind of thoughts cause suffering? These are 16 of them. They are classified according to past, present, future. He unwisely attends in this way. In other words, he thinks in this way. Unwisely attends means to think negatively. Was I in the past? Was I not in the past? Okay? That means you start looking back. Oh, in the past, what was I? I was suffering in the past. Or I was very successful in the past. I was very handsome in the past. Whatever. I was very young in the past, and so on. Okay? We think too much about that. Or I was not this, I was not that in the past. Okay? What was I in the past? What means object? Of status. How was I in the past? How do I feel? Having been what did I become in the past? What was I before I became in the past? So when you look at cause and effect in the past, will I be in the future? Am I not in the future? So this time it's the future. Eh? What will I be in the future? How will I be in the future? Having been what will I become in the future? And then we think of the present. Right now, we worry this. Or else right now, he inwardly has doubts about the present. Thus, am I? Do I exist? Do I not exist? Am I not? What am I? How am I? Where has this being come from? Where will it or this being go? Start thinking all these things come to our minds. Yeah? So these views, in other words, are what cause us to worry and to be lost because we don't know the answers. Now the idea here is you can't really stop this unless your mind is clear, basically. So keep the mind clear, and the answers have a way of coming by themselves. Now, so when we go on thinking like this, we think about ourselves in the past, present, future, self-view begin to arise. We begin to create a kind of idea about ourselves. Okay? I notice in many people, at a certain age, especially when they are young, let's say from young adulthood, let's say after adolescence, say around 18, 19, 20 to say about 30, okay? That's the age where people start looking for their identity, and they've been asking this kind of questions. And sometimes you can give the best explanations, but you're still curious. So you go around hunting, looking. In a sense, that's good. You go through the stage, but you got to allow the question and answers to come and go. If not, the 6 self-views will arise. This is section 8. Can you see section 8, 6 self-views? To one who unwisely attains or unwisely directs his attention in this way, one or other of the 6 views arise. That is to say, a self exists for me, arises as true and real for him. Or you can think there is no self for me, right? Those who believe in the God idea, they say, oh, there's a soul. Those who don't believe in the God idea, there's a growing group in Singapore called the humanists. So to them, there's no soul, no self. Okay? So this is very interesting. So in the case of the Buddhists, what we are saying is, we are not interested in the self, whether it exists or does not exist. Both of these are views. They are views. It doesn't really matter. You just leave them aside. Of course, as a provisional teaching, we would rather say there is no self. Easier to understand. But ultimately, you can even say there's no self, because you don't have to say that. You know? For example, we talk about unicorns. Do unicorns exist or not? I mean, it's not important to say there are no unicorns. It doesn't matter. It's a philosophical idea. Number 3, the view I perceive a self with a self. You have a self, and this self understands as a self. Okay? These are philosophical ideas. The view I perceive not self with a self. So there is a self, but the self sees there's no self. And then, or else, there is such a view of this as this. It is this self of mine that speaks and feels, now here, now there, coming results both good and bad. But this self of mine is permanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change. It will endure forever. So this is really the eternal self, right? So the Buddha says, this holding on to views, Bhikshus, is called a wilderness of views, a twisting of views, a wriggling of views, fetter of views. There's no end to thinking in this kind of views. You say, oh, there must be a soul or self, that it is suffering all these results of karma. Fettered by the fetter of view, Bhikshus, the uninstructed worldling is not free from birth, from decay, from death, from sorrow, from lamentation, from physical pain, certain pain, from physical pain, from mental pain, from despair. He is not free from suffering, I say. So this is the negative part. Don't worry about the negative part. I will come to the positive part. What to do? 9, wise attention. So how do we direct our mind wisely? But Bhikshus, an instructed noble disciple who has regard for the noble ones and is skilled and well disciplined in the dharma of the noble ones, and who has regard for the true individual and is skilled in the well disciplined in their dharma, in the dharma of the true individuals, understands what state should be attended to, what state should not be attended to, or he understands what things to pay attention to, what things not to pay attention to. And knowing, so the next relationally means, when knowing this, the negative states will arise. In simple terms, let me simplify. The wise person, the wise practitioner knows what to think about and what not to think about. Okay? So, before we get a bit confused, let me just simplify it further. Sometimes as you sit quietly, you find some thoughts come to mind. You should ask yourself this question: is this thought worth thinking about? Is it worth following? Because if you can't solve it and it really is not important, you've got to let it go. Because otherwise it's going to create more suffering. The other one is, if a thought is positive, someone has done something good, you feel happy, and that's a good thought, keep it going. So this is a basic question we must ask ourselves. The Buddha elaborates, 10a, states that should not be attended to. And what bhikshus are the states that should not be attended to, and to which he does not attend? Bhikshus, there are those states to be attended to But there are those states that are attended to, where the unarisen. So here, let me simplify. Okay, those three influxes do not arise; they do not continue. So those are the things you must do. Okay? And then you go down to 11a. He wisely attends. Okay, this is he directs his mind properly. This is suffering. Okay, for example, the next time you did something, you didn't succeed, okay? Or maybe you are in pain, okay? Or something you really want to do, you cannot do. You tell yourself, this is something. And notice how you feel. Just notice it, like a doctor. You know, a doctor is very curious about the pain that's going on in his body. You know? He's not, he doesn't feel angry or upset. He says, wow, this is what it's like to feel this pain. So he looks at this pain and understands it. This is suffering. So first, that's a simple fact, okay? Then he wisely attends, this is the arising of suffering. Because to see the conditions why this kind of suffering arises. He wisely attends, this is the ending of suffering. You notice in our lives, we have been through pain before, but we also notice the pain disappears. But this time you watch, how did it disappear? The conditions are removed. Okay? So you know the cause and effect. He wisely attends, this is the way to the ending of suffering. So you begin to see the pattern, the steps, how to do it. So you experience the Four Noble Truths in your life. And in doing this, the next step is very important. Okay? When he thus wisely attends in this way, these three fetters are abandoned. That is to say, self-identity view, sakkayaditthi, doubt, vicikicca, attachment to rules and rituals, or vows and rituals, if you like. These bhikshus are called the influxes that are to be abandoned by seeing. So this is the first one. The first method is the most important. Anyone knows why? It's so clear to this point you just finished. What is this section talking about? Anyone can guess? See, these three factors, right? These three factors deal with becoming a stream winner. Stream winner. The stream winner is the first stage saint. Okay? First stage, stream winner. The Pali word is Sotapanna. Stream winner is the first stage saying, he has got only 7 more lives to go at the most. Okay? He could become enlightened in the next life, he could become enlightened in 3 lifetimes, or at the most 7 more lives. Okay? So these are the 3 things he will destroy. So by practicing proper attention, writing your mind wisely, you will break these 3 factors. Number 1, you will let go of what's called the personality view. It's already mentioned the first part just now. This person starts thinking, oh, I have a self, soul, I am like this, I am like that. He lets go of all that. He doesn't have that kind of idea, no personality view. Okay? In other words, you know yourself, you are changing all the time. The body is changing, the mind also is changing. Secondly, you don't have spiritual doubt. Here, one technical meaning is you understand the Four Noble Truths. Okay? Another meaning is you have confidence in yourself that you can do. Right? You don't need to rely on other people. You don't need to look outside yourself. The answer is inside you. And no attachment to rules and rituals. No superstition. Okay? Here, attachment to rules and rituals means people think that simply by observing rules only you can become pure. Yeah? It doesn't work like that. Okay? Because we can get so attached to the rules, and we think because we have done the rituals and the rules, therefore we are pure. Okay? This is very common in the Buddha's time. Because those people, for example, they believe, you go to the water baptism, you go down to the water, you come out again, you're pure, all your sins are washed away. The Buddha said, if that's the case, the fishes will be very pure. That's not the way it works. So you must be, the washing must be done inside, not outside. But I mean, if you just go to water and wash yourself, I could have murdered my neighbor and I said, wow, time you did, so go to the river, wash myself, and kill again. It's terrible, isn't it? I can kill again, So it's not a very safe idea, okay? So here means no superstition. So these three broken becomes stream. As a stream winner, you will never consciously break the 5 precepts. Somehow you naturally want to keep the 5 precepts. You see no reason for killing, for stealing, for committing adultery, for lying or getting drunk. Okay? Your mind is such that you are able to have faith in the Buddha's teaching, in a sense that you are not easily attracted. People come to you and say, hey, you come to this religion, you just pay $10, you sign your name, and this guy slaps you on the forehead, you have a place in heaven for sure. There's one group doing that, by the way. You just sign your name in the book, the book of life. You pay $10. And then you are in the secret inner circle, when they have a meeting, they have guards at the door. You can't come in, you're not a member. And all kinds of such groups. Right? And when society becomes busy, in Singapore, the competition is bad, these quick answers are always available for a few. So no, you won't go for the sort of thing. In the Buddha's time also there are such quick answers. So the point is they don't work. Alright, so this is the first one. Any question on this first one? This is the most important. If you can't follow the other 6, it's okay. Focus on number 1. The overcoming of the influxes to seeing. That's the most important, seeing. But the next one is also useful. It is section 12. Influxes to be abandoned by restraint. Self-control. Here when we say self, what do we mean? The self are your 6 senses. The eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. And the 6 senses are changing all the time. So when we talk about self in Buddhism, we're talking about an impermanent self. And I'm reading 12, section 12. And what Bhikshus are the influxes to be abandoned by restraint? Or in simple language, how do we overcome these causes of suffering and pain? By restraint, by controlling ourselves. Sense restraint. Sense restraint simply means see less, hear less, smell less, taste less, everything cut down. Okay. So you remember the 3 monkeys, right? See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Actually, there are 6 monkeys, right? Not 3. The 6 senses. Okay, and here is listed. Number 1. Here, Bhikshus. Here means in this teaching, in the Buddha's teaching, a monk dwells wisely restrained in the eye faculty. Notice here, wisely restrained. It doesn't mean you close your eyes totally, then might as well be blind. Because in the last sutta, the Majjhima Nikaya, number 252, this person, he went to the Buddha asked him, what does your teacher teach? And this young man said, my teacher teaches, don't see anything, don't say anything, don't hear anything. That's the best way to overcome suffering. The Buddha said, in that case, might as well be blind, dumb, and deaf. Isn't it? So it's not just that it's wisely restrained. You've got to see your way when you walk, you've got to look at people when you talk, but you don't say, wow, very handsome, very beautiful, or this part nice, that part nice. Not like that. You just look so that there is awareness. Okay? Wisely restrain the eye faculty. Bhikshus, while influxes, vexation and fever may arise in one who dwells unrestrained in the faculty, eye faculty. Even so, there are no influxes, vexation or fever in one who dwells with the eye restrained. So in the case of a monk, his eyes are restrained. Okay? So in that sense, suffering will not arise. You see, notice vexation. Vexation means irritation. Fever means uneasiness. People fall in love, they have this fever, mental fever, not body fever. Okay? If you like, the first one is body, the second one is body fever, third one is mental fever. So even so, when the eyes are controlled, less suffering. He dwells wisely restrained the ear faculty, same thing. So here, this applies especially during retreats. That's why we learn to see more, see less, but look more. We see less but look more, you know what I mean? We try to close our outer eyes but we see with the inner eye. Sometimes you look at people, you look with your external eyes, but you don't know what this person is thinking. You don't even know what person is feeling. But as a counselor, it's very important, you read a person in the same, right? Because you want to help this person. So if you're a good teacher, you should be able to also, in a way, look at a person and read the person so you can help this person. Okay, that's the meaning. Not just depend on our external eyes. The second one is to restrain in the ear faculty. Right? So here the Buddha says if you hear too much, then after you feel unhappy, you feel trouble, desire may arise. So hear less. Number 3, smell less. Don't worry about perfume or whatever, just cut down the smell and less trouble for you. Number 4, taste less, or rather eat less. This one is dealing with eating. So the monks eat mindfully. These monks are very interesting way of eating. They eat really slow, almost as slow as a tortoise. This tortoise eat very slow. So there was this monk I knew. He left the order at the same time as I did. This Kanti Pablo. He's an Englishman, but he's now living in Australia. Very famous monk. He belongs to the other group, the Tamayut in Thailand. He was interviewed by this journalist. So he was eating. He was a forest monk, eating from his bowl very slowly. See, the monks, they use their hand and eat. And they won't open their mouth until the food touches the mouth. And the food goes in, and it's chew and chew, like a carp, very slow. Then this journalist was amazed. He looked at this monk eating so slowly, kind of like gawking. He said, I've never seen this before, this human being eating so slowly. So he was wondering, he thought that this monk is not enjoying his food. And he said, eats so slow. He doesn't enjoy his food at all. So at the end, when this monk has finished eating, he asked the monk, why are you eating so slowly? Don't you enjoy your food? The monk said, no, I'm eating slowly because I'm enjoying my food. Right? So that is why I'm eating slowly. The thing is, he didn't explain in detail, because probably the interview was the Buddhist. But the idea of eating slowly, chewing it, is to be mindful what's going on when you eat. And as you eat, your consciousness is there in your mouth. Chewing, and every little taste comes to your mind. But of course, you don't bother about it, you just know what's going on. And every morsel, every grain of rice is well digested. Okay, in that sense. So eat little, but everything is energizing good. Okay? Number 5, he dwells wisely restraining the body faculty. So body action, everything is restrained, very calm. And he walks a very peaceful way of walking. He dwells wisely restraining the mind faculty. Now this is the most difficult one, the mind. He lets go of all negative thoughts. You just try to focus. In fact, in meditation, you let go of thoughts. So the second method of overcoming suffering is watch your 6 senses. Basically, watch your 6 senses. A very simple way of restraining your senses is simply to be aware of what's happening in front of you. Let's say you walk in a beautiful garden. You just see the flowers, you see the trees, you know there's fresh air there. Just be there, be present, and you'll find you're very happy. That's the meaning there. Number 3, influxes to be abandoned by reflective use. Okay, here's where we use things. And the monks, they have 4 things. You look at the heading, brackets 1, brackets 2, and so on. First is clothing. This is the robes, right? And the next one is on food. The third one is on lodging. And then the fourth one is on medicine. This one is, the monks will recite this, For example, let me just give you an idea how the Pali sounds like. The monks will recite Patisakka yoniso jivaram patisevatiya vadevasita sapatigataya unhasapatigataya damsamakasa vatatapasini sapasampasanam patigataya yavadeva virikotina patichadanatang. Okay, so it's a very beautiful recitation. It's a kind of tune to it. Wisely reflecting, he uses the robe. But the monk will recite, wisely reflecting, I use the robe. Okay, so it says Patisakka yoniso, patisewami. Okay, so patisewati means he, patisewami is I. So wisely reflecting, he uses the robe. only for warding off heat, only for the sake of warding off cold, for the sake of warding off the touch of mosquitoes, flies, the wind, the sun, and creeping creatures, for the purpose of covering up the previous out of moral shame. So the monk wears a robe purely to keep away the discomforts and dangers from weather, and also for looking decent. Because there are also naked ascetics those days, by the way. They thought that being totally naked is holy because you don't own anything at all. But Buddha said, no, you cover yourself decently. Okay? And their robes are very simple. Patch robes, red robes. Okay? So this is to wear the robes, reminding us, the monk reminds himself, it's just for this simple use, not for fashion, not to look beautiful. Okay? Next, the monk reflects when he eats food. Okay? Wisely reflecting, he uses alms food. Not for amusement, not for intoxication, not for fattening, not for beautifying. These last two sentences are very interesting. Not for fattening, not for beautifying. The commentator says that, those palace women, they got to eat just the right amount of food so that the right parts of the body are fleshy and so on. And I don't know, maybe the Indian women, they like a bit of stomach coming out and so on. So they got to eat so that they become a bit chubby and they're beautiful, nice cheeks and so on. So the monks doesn't do that. But only for keeping this body going and enduring, so that you can function. For ending hunger pangs, for the sake of assisting the holy life, so that we can practice the Dharma, teach the Dharma. Considering, thinking, thus I shall get rid of an old feeling and not let a new feeling arise. So the old feeling of hunger goes away, the new hunger does not arise. Otherwise we get distracted. And so that I will be healthy and blameless. Notice, healthy and blameless. And live at ease. Healthy and blameless. First of all, I'm okay. And because I am not sick, so I don't make mistakes. I'm not unmindful and so on. Right? And live at ease. Live at ease here means that my body is comfortable and I can easily go into meditation. I mean, if you're really sick, it's not easy to meditate, for example. Next, reflection on lodging, on the hut or the room, whatever where he's living in. Wisely reflecting, he uses lodging only for warding off cold, for warding off heat, for warding off the touch of mosquitoes, flies, the wind, the sun, and creeping creatures. Creeping creatures include snakes and scorpions and so on. Only for avoiding weather hazards for the purpose of enjoying solitude. So he uses a simple hut. Medicine. Wisely reflecting, he uses support for the sick and medical requisites only for warding off feelings of illness that have arisen, only for the sake of non-affliction. So just to heal sickness, not for fun, not for intoxication. Right? So in this way, he overcomes all those causes of suffering. Number 4, influxes to be abandoned by endurance. This is the 4th way to strengthen ourselves spiritually, endurance. And what bhikshus are the influxes to be abandoned by endurance? Here bhikshus are monk wisely reflecting, bears heat, cold, hunger, thirst, the touch of mosquitoes, flies, the wind, the sun, and creeping creatures. Okay, so, when you go for retreat, you go into the forest, it's not very comfortable, Sometimes people in the city, they say, wow, very romantic idea, go to the forest for meditation. First time in their life they ever went, and they thought, wow, it's really suffering. Mosquitoes biting, Sometimes it's very difficult to accept some of these teachings, First of all, Achandra, someone asked him, oh, mosquitoes, what do you do when they bite you? He says, it's okay, when I meditate, mosquitoes come. I say, go ahead, take as much blood as you like. I got lots of it. But I'm not sure how many of us can do that, We at least want to chase away the mosquito, So this is where we just say, it's okay, you're not going to be troubled by it. And you'll be surprised when you're not troubled by it, it doesn't trouble you. Then he endures the ways of words, ill-spoken, unwelcome. Sometimes we hear words, people go to a monk and say, why you live like this? Why don't you enjoy life? And so the monk doesn't bother. And the arisen bodily feelings are painful, racking, sharp, piercing, repugnant, disagreeable, deadly. So any kind of pain, he bears it. Bhikshus, while influxes, vexation and fever may arise in one who lacks endurance, in the case of the monk, he is not troubled by all this. Okay? So in other words here, be strong. Actually, if you look at the average Chinese worker, he has great endurance, our ancestors. All these things which is mentioned here, they can stand. They're very tough. So in a sense, the Buddha is saying we should be like that too. Okay? Of course, to be like that too, you've got to do it gradually. Okay? At first, if you have difficult, then you learn to train yourself. And you find in the end you become tougher, basically. Next practice, we are reaching the end already. It is abandoned by avoidance. And what bhikshus are influxes to be abandoned by avoidance? Here, bhikshu, a monk wisely reflecting, avoids a wild elephant or wild horse, avoids wild cattle, avoids wild dog, a snake, a stump, a thorny spot, a chasm, a cliff, a cesspit, a sewer. Wisely reflecting, he avoids sitting on where it is unsuitable for sitting, going where it is unsuitable for going. He avoids associating with improper friends, bad friends. For if he were to do so, wise colleagues in the holy life might suspect him of evil conduct. So here is where he is very careful, because a monk who lives in the forest, he must also be aware where there are wild animals, where there are dangerous animals, where there is a cliff, dangerous rocks. So he's got to look around, okay, and make sure the place is safe. Next thing, he's got to be careful that in the villages, it doesn't go to the wrong place, and then people will suspect, what is monk doing there? There are a lot of street girls there. So he's very careful about where he goes. This is the next one, avoiding the wrong places and dangerous places. Number 6, and what bhikshus are influxes to abandon by removal? Here bhikshus are monk wisely reflecting, does not tolerate an arisen thought of sensual pleasure. So when a thought of sensual pleasure arises, he pushes it away. He abandons it, removes it, makes an end of it, brings it to naught, straight away pushes it out. Next, he does not tolerate an arisen thought of ill will. He pushes it away. Next, he does not tolerate thought of violence that arises in him. So these are the 3 wrong thoughts. Thoughts of desire, negative desire, ill will, violence. Immediately they arise, pushes it out. Okay? The moment it arises, abandon it. And the last one. Influxes to be abandoned by cultivation, bhavana. This is meditation. Okay? What is meditation? Is less last. It's most difficult. Here, bhikshus among wisely reflecting cultivates the awakening factor of mindfulness, dependent on solitude. Okay, how to be mindful? You find a quiet place where you can be by yourself. It can be a small room, very quiet, or it can be a beautiful forest. You are by yourself. You are bodily, you are in solitude. Okay? First level. Dependent on the fading away of lust or dispassion. So you let go of all the negative desires. Dependent on cessation of suffering, all the pains and mental pain goes away. Ripening in the letting go of defilements. All those negative thoughts are gone. 2, wisely reflecting, he cultivates the awakening factor of Dharma investigation, dependent on solitude, dependent on fading away of lust, dependent on cessation of suffering, ripening and letting go. Okay, now I only focus on the 7 underlying words. These are called the 7 awakening factors. These are the stages of meditation. Number 2 is, let's start with number 1, mindfulness. Okay, mindfulness means you direct your mind to one thing at a time. For example, the breath. All the time you focus on the breath. A bit loving kindness, all the time focusing on loving kindness. The mind wanders, bring it back. The mind wanders, bring it back. That is the exercise. You keep on doing that, the more you do it, the more your mind will listen. It's just like training a dog. A puppy, you tell the dog, sit, and after all the dog listens to you. So the mind is like that. At first, a very fierce animal. It runs around by itself. But you tell the mind, I want you to be calm. Pay attention to the breath. Pay attention to the breath. And this mind will listen to you after a while. And meditation is such that the more you do it, the easier it becomes. The first lesson is difficult. And then after that, the person is surprised. At the end of the lesson, the person says, wow, I can actually do it. It's so simple. So meditation is like that. Talking about it, very difficult. You do it, after one round, you find you'll be able to do it at least a bit. Next thing, you are mindful, you have Dhamma investigation. You investigate mental states that arise. Dhamma investigation. Examine the mental states that arise. If you feel pain, you know the pain. You feel happy, you know the happiness. You feel sad, just know what it is. You note it, you let it go. You note it, you let it go. One Dhamma teacher uses the analogy of a jaga standing at the door. There's a party going on, very important party, you must be invited to come. This jaga stands at the door. He checks the guests as they come in. Then he looks at the guests. But he's the jaga, you cannot be following everyone in. So meditator is a jaga. You look at the mind, okay? Whatever thoughts, you look at it, let it go. You examine it, let it go. Okay? Dhamma investigation. Then next one is, number 3 is effort. You keep on doing this, keep on doing this. Put in the effort. And as you keep on doing this effort, zest, number 4, zest arises. Wisely reflecting, he cultivates the awakening factor of zest. Zest, I think there's a soap called zest, right? Zest gives you this energy, joyful energy. It's not just energy, because you become angry also there's energy, but you destroy things. This is joyful energy. Just like you like music, you like paintings, you see a beautiful scenery, there's this wonderful feeling about it. You go on looking. Joyful energy. So when you go on meditating, there's wonderful, joyful energy that makes you want to go on doing it. Very often in a meditation class, I get these remarks, the first time the person may say, how come you like the sitting so, you make the sitting so long, you're supposed to end it earlier. But then after they sit, and towards the end of the meditation, then they will say, oh, this time how come you end it so fast? Because they're already enjoying it. They say, why do you end it so fast? Actually, the timing is the same. It's just that when you enjoy it, you think the timing is so short. And when you don't enjoy it, the timing seems to be long. This is called organic time. This time constructed in your mind. So here, if you have the zest, joyful interest, you can sit for a long time. And when you come out of it, you say, wow, it's only 1 hour. That is zest. And when you go on building this zest, enjoying your meditation, your body and mind becomes tranquil. Number 5. Wisely reflecting, it cultivates the awakening factor of tranquility. Body and mind are tranquil, at peace, joyful, peaceful, happy. And when you are happy, that's when concentration starts. Mothers especially, when a son has gone overseas for a long time comes back, she'll be spending her time cooking, and she's so focused in the cooking. And you're doing the washing also, not tired at all. Of course, once everything is over, then you do feel the tiredness. So when you're happy, your mind can focus very well. That is why in meditation it's very important to be happy first. Be happy first. And when you are totally focused, the mind becomes equanimous. Equanimity arises, number 7. Here, equanimity refers to the focused mind as totally peaceful and joyful, jhana. And when the mind is like that, all the negative states are removed, at least temporarily. Okay? So the Buddha summarizes everything. He says, there you are, these are the 7 ways of overcoming all the causes of suffering, the influxes. And the Buddha says, I'm reading conclusion, somewhere in the middle of conclusion. Then Bhikshus, this monk is called a monk who dwells, restrained in the restraint of all the influxes. He has cut off craving, broken free from the fetter, and with the complete penetration of conceit, he has made an end of suffering. So you go to do all this, you overcome suffering. The Blessed One said this. The monks approve of the Blessed One's word with a joyful heart. Okay, any questions? Complete penetration of conceit. Oh, okay. That is the second last line in the verse. Conceit is the, notice where conceit is located here. See conscious number 8, right? This last 5, only the arahat totally destroys arahat, and the fully enlightened saints. Conceit is the measuring of people. Okay, even any kind of saint, as long as they're not arahat, they still have some level of conceit. For example, even a non-returner, he may look at you and say, "Oh, you don't know much dharma. Why don't you try harder?" So there is this idea like I'm better than you, or I'm worse than you, or I'm as good as you. This is called 3 kinds of conceit, or complexes: superiority complex, inferiority complex, equality complex. This is found in everyone except the arahat. Arahat doesn't measure people. Okay? So when you practice all this, in other words, you become an arahat. You will look at people just as they are. So no matter who comes to arahat, you will teach. You will be kind to this person. Okay? Any other question? Yeah?
I have a couple of questions. Under the 16 doubts where...
Wait, what number? What?
It's on page 27, or the second page of this.
16 doubts. Okay, that is section 7.
This to me, was I in the past, was I not in the... From my background, there's a lot of talk about karma and past lives and future lives and doing this and doing that to make sure you're reborn better or higher. But here it's saying, is it this saying you really shouldn't do that?
Alright. Now, different teachers may present the Dharma in different ways. For example, on the lower level, they say, well, I should work hard towards at least having a better rebirth. On a higher level, the teacher will tell you, this is not something you keep on thinking about. This is something you do, right? So the idea is not to measure it in terms of success and failure, but just to keep on doing it, okay? And then it's just like when you are growing a plant, you can go on looking at it. It's not going, you won't see it growing. You just got to keep on attending to it, giving it the right conditions, weeding it. The idea here is not to think and worry about it in the sense of they're just conceptions in the mind, but to get it done, basically. Do what needs to be done. Not just think about it, worry about it, and harp on the past. There is a sutta related to this. It's called the manasikāra Sutta. In fact, there are 3 or 4, a whole set of them. It says, let go of the past, it's gone. Do not follow, do not try to jump to the future, it has not yet come. But watch the present moment as it arises. That is the teaching to remember in this connection.
Well, I've also wondered, sometimes it seems like when there's a lot of focus on past lives and future lives, that it sort of allows us to put that on other people. And the reason they're having bad life is because they did something badly in the past life. And it seems quite judgmental.
That's right.
And that would be another.
Yes. That is why there are some Buddhists, like Stephen Batchelor and his group. They just kind of suspend any kind of belief in karma and rebirth for the moment.
Because it's too easy to put it on other people.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose it is better, safer to use for yourself. For example, let's say you've been dealing with a situation, you find no matter what you do, things don't seem to work. Then you tell yourself, okay, perhaps, maybe, this is something from past karma. I lack that energy, I lack the ability to solve this problem at the moment. So you leave it at that, and you use endurance. You either endurance to let it be, and just being mindful until such time that these things will change. And you will notice, if you look at your past until now, you find that situations have changed. So when you examine it that way, then you realize that yes, no matter how I felt about something in the past, I thought that the problem could not be solved, but actually it is because of the impatience that made me feel that I could not solve this problem. But when you look back, the problem was solved. It's that moment you think it cannot be solved. So the idea is, the Buddha says, if you have done your best and the problem is still not solved, then ask yourself, what do I do next? What's the next step I should do? If I can't do that, okay, I'll just leave it like this for a while. There's some other thing I could do.
So if you use this as the path in this life, present life, this works.
Well, yeah, that's right.
Better.
Yes.
And then the second question I had was in the very next section, on number 13. Here again, my text. There was sometimes when they're teaching meditation, this is a question they tell you to ask. What am I?
Okay.
And to just focus on, just meditate on what am I.
All right.
Here it says you want you to do that.
Okay, that's very interesting. Now you have gone through that exercise, have you? Okay, so could you maybe share a bit what you experienced there? What the benefits of it?
Well, for me, I think what it was it's the sense of sort of the skandha, arising and passing and arising.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's okay. Here, what am I? We are reflecting on something as permanent. For example, I was a king in the past. I had this, I had that. You kind of, it's what we call a kind of fixation. That's what it means here. But you look at it as something permanent. Remember, the word here is skillful consideration, wise attention. Unwise attention is thinking of it as in terms of permanence. But if you think in terms of impermanence, non-self, the skandhas as non-self, the aggregates as non-self, it's not included here. We wouldn't include it here. So although the teacher may use the same sentence, but it's not referring to the same teaching. Okay? Any other question?
I have a question on the third factor.
Third, yeah.
Attachment to rules and rituals.
Okay, yes.
So you link it to superstition. Sometimes I think there's a very thin line between what is and what is not a ritual. I give two examples. Sometimes when you do a puja, the monks will tell you have to bow down 3 times at certain times of the puja.
Okay.
And then we have to go around the building, with this and that. And the other example I thought of is during Vesak Day, it is very customary to use holy waters to bathe the little boy Buddha.
Okay.
So are these rituals or are these not rituals, and are they related to this?
Okay, very good question. Now notice here, it doesn't say simply rules and rituals, it says attachment to rules and rituals. Attachment to rules. In fact, there's a special word. Paramasa. Paramasa can translate as fixation to rules and rituals. Bowing down is a good ritual because we reflect. First time we bow down to the Buddha, second time we bow down to the Sangha, and also it's a communal act. Okay? So if it's done mindfully, you reflect on impermanence, that's fine. It's not attachment to a ritual. Here, attachment means a person, for example, he bows down only twice. He goes back, thinks about it, he's very worried about it. Oh dear, I only did it twice. That's bad karma. But that's fixation. That's the meaning. So the idea here is that even when we do our chanting or we do our rituals, if it's not properly done, we are not too troubled by it. We are putting our effort, but we might forget something. That's fine. It's no problem because our salvation doesn't come with the rituals. Those rituals to help us become mindful and so on. So the idea is not to be fixated to it. Because if you think the answer lies in that action, then you might as well just do those actions. You don't need to do other things. So the idea here is attachment. This is the key word. Here, minimum. Cut down to the minimum. And make it meaningful. That's the thing. Because some people, I've seen some people, they come to the temple, they pick a big bundle of joss stick and they stick it in a strange pattern and all around the urn, and they put it everywhere, And this kind of person has got some kind of emotional problem. So of course, when they do this, they forget about the problem. But then when they finish it, it comes back, see? So they need to be counseled, they need to go to a therapist. So in a sense, attachment to rules and rituals reflect some kind of emotional state that needs to be corrected or attended to. So in counseling is very helpful because all these things make very good sense when we talk about psychology of counseling. Okay? Any other question? Okay, so no more questions, is it? Alright, then we'll end here. We'll do a short reflection. Today we have completed our study of the Sabbasava Sutta, second discourse of the middle nine sayings, middle nine discourses. The Sutta gives us 7 methods of dealing with causes and types of sufferings, the influxes. Our task is to select which of these we can relate to best, especially the first one. Try to understand it as much as possible. Go back, read through the passage again, and see how you relate to it, and see how far you can practice it, and how far you have improved. This is the teaching the Buddha has given us down 2,500 years. It is still available to us. There might come a time when all these teachings will be lost. It's so difficult to even know there was such a teaching, but here we have them, so we should treasure these teachings. In coming for these classes, sitting here peacefully, we're all keeping the precepts. Recorded on this very wonderful moment of peace, where we dedicate ourselves to the Buddha's teaching, seeking self-understanding, bringing compassion to other beings too. May all these good deeds we have done in our minds quickly focus. May we be well, may we be happy. May this place be blessed with good teachers. May all the Sutta be blessed with happiness, wisdom, compassion. And at this point, let us dedicate our loving kindness to all those people who are important to us, wherever they may be. Good deeds, may our minds quickly focus. May this light is set we attain spiritual liberation, especially streamline. May all beings be well and happy.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.